Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first story is titled Sausage, Egg and Cheese Biscuit. My mum was an overnight manager at a truck stop. She regularly had to deal with drunks and the obnoxious Sunday morning crowd. There was a man that came in every Sunday morning, very early. No sooner than his order would hit the window, he would start yelling loudly, "Is it done yet? Where's my food?" and other rude things. The staff cringed when he walked in. My mum had enough. This particular Sunday, after a very rough Saturday night full of drunks, this man walks in with his usual crew and sits at his usual table. Just like clockwork, he started yelling as soon as his ticket hit the window. Mum threw a biscuit on the plate, added a piece of cheese, raw sausage patty, then cracked an egg and added the top part of the biscuit. She took him his order personally, slammed the plate down in front of him and calmly asked him if he wanted his food now or if he wanted it cooked. He never yelled after that day. He became one of the nicest and best tipping customers. The next story is titled Cheeseburger Without Cheese? No problem. When I was studying a long time ago, early 2000s, I worked at a fast food chain with golden arches which formerly employed a clown. Probably this was why it attracted clowns who thought it was funny and creative to do purposely false orders like ordering competitors' brands or odd numbers of chicken nuggets. Yeah boy, really creative, haven't heard this for 1,000 times yet. Anyways, my favorite was always the order of a cheeseburger without cheese. Everyone aware of the range of said restaurant chain knows that a cheeseburger without cheese is a plain hamburger. Otherwise, you know it now. There was a price difference between the two burgers of maybe 20 or 30 cents. So, here comes the malicious compliance. The registers to that time had already been able to process individual requests like "no cheese" and transfer it directly to the kitchen staff. I don't think that no cheese option was intended for simple cheeseburgers, but it worked. And it doesn't reduce the item price to the price of a plain hamburger. So every time a clown would order a cheeseburger without cheese, I would ring this up instead of the plain hamburger of desire. No other tiny retaliation ever felt so good. At least one time, a clown evolved to a Karen and complained to the supervisor. However, after explaining what the customer ordered, she even confirmed this to the supervisor. My supervisor concludes that this was exactly done by textbook and nothing was wrong. I quit anyway as soon as I got a better offer. The next story is titled Hate My Class. Too bad you forgot which one I was in. I went to a big university and all undergrads in the business school and a few other schools I believe had to take business calc. Nightmarish course for the non-math people, and my professor made it all the worse. He was the kind of professor where if he saw someone doing anything other than paying attention, he would stop what he was doing, stare for a few seconds, then yell out or throw his chalk at them. One time we had someone up and leave in the middle of class. He retook attendance just to figure out who it was. Complete hothead. Well, I was dating this girl in one of his other business calc classes. Hers was only 50 minutes long, 3x per week, whereas mine was 115, 2x per week. Apparently he wasn't a dick in that class. I guess he just couldn't stand us. Maybe he just had us at a crapty time of day or something. Well, maybe 2/3 of the way through the semester, I had to miss an exam. No idea why, but I had a legitimate excuse and he was going to let me make it up in his office. Everyone took the exam on either Wednesday, 50 minutes section, or Thursday, my section. I heard from the lady friend that he only required a 10/15 to get a 100%. You could basically completely screw up or leave blank any 5 questions and those were gimmies. I thought, hell yeah, this went from being hard to easy just like that. So I studied and showed up on time, about 1 p.m. IIRC the Friday after, so I hadn't been to class yet. As expected, the exam had 15 questions on it. At the top of my paper, he wrote in red ink, 1 o'clock to 1:50, indicating I had only 50 minutes for the exam. I thought about saying something cause I definitely should have gotten an hour 15, but figured whatever, I only need a 10 out of 15 anyways and the other class did it in 50. This guy is also a dick, remember, so I just kept my mouth shut. Next week, he's handing back tests. My class did not get the 10/15 perk. We had to get 15/15. Not sure if anyone else knew, but it was complete BS cause it's stupidly easier to do well on 10/15 versus 15/15. He screwed my class over hard on that one. Fair would have been 10 out of 10 for the other class. Of course, he didn't tell us any of this. I got something in the high 70s, maybe an 80. Not bad, but I only had 50 minutes MFER. I walk up to him after class and say, I thought we only had to get 10/15 right. He sarcastically retorts, the other class only needed 10/15, but that was to make it fair since they only had 50 minutes. But I only had 50 minutes, holding up my test, pointing to his big red ink, trying to force a look of confusion. He takes the paper, looks at it for what seemed a long moment, dramatically scratches out the previous grade, writes a big fat 100% at the top and says, I guess I made a mistake. And that's how I pulled the A in business calc. The next story is titled, Can't order new chairs but I can order parts? Let's build some new chairs. I worked for a number of years as a senior computer technician for a very large and well-known technology company. The room that repairs take place had a lot of restrictions and precautions. One such consideration was for ESD, electrostatic discharges. You couldn't wear any fabrics that might cause static, the mat that repairs were done on was ground, and every technician had a grounded wrist strap. All of the tools complied and so did the chairs. The main focus of this compliance are the chairs. Over time the cushions on the chairs were cracked, there was a ring along the base to put your feet that was constantly loose or wobbling, the gas shock on a few chairs was shot, and there was a trailing chain piece attached to the base to ground the chair that was commonly missing. If this piece was missing, the chair was no longer ESD safe and could no longer be in the room. For whatever reason, the person who is supposed to take care of repairing or replacing the chairs just wasn't doing it. I finally got tired of this and stepped in. I emailed the department in charge and asked what needed to be done to replace a few chairs. The response I received was, I am not allowed to order new chairs, it is not in the budget. I can however order the parts required to repair the chairs. I was then sent an order form listing all of the parts that I was authorized to order. I explained all of the issues with the chairs and how it would be more cost-effective to simply replace the chairs. No, I was not allowed, and I must order the parts if I want the chairs repaired. You can guess where this is going. 5 chairs needed replacing, so let's order us some parts and build 5 new chairs. I'm pretty sure the cost of all the parts and the shipping totaled more than just buying whole new chairs. On top of that, I was paid to disassemble the old chairs to salvage parts, and then build the new chairs. Also, I could only do 1 chair at a time since the others were needed in the repair room. All of them were still in use except for the ones with the broken trailing chain. In the end, they spent a lot more money on my time to disassemble and reassemble these chairs than just ordering complete new chairs. The next story is titled, I changed the exam rules for everyone. When I was 16, I had to sit the GCSEs, which are end of secondary school exams in the UK. One of the subjects I chose to take was French, which included an oral exam, a written exam paper and a written piece recalled from memory. The written piece could be promoted with a flashcard. This flashcard could not contain something like more than 30 words on there. Now usually that's fine, because we'd take the flashcard with our prompts, and put that on the desk. Underneath the paper we would write on would be the entire script that we'd then just trace. This worked pretty well until they cottoned on. So then I realized that they never said anything about pictures or symbols. The entire week before the assessment I pretty much created my own hieroglyphs. If there was a les in my sentence, I would draw a man in a bed and so on. The whole script was written out for me, and I ended up getting a better grade overall in my French than my English. Apparently the next year no pictures or symbols were allowed. The next story is titled, Write Whatever You Know. This story is about my grandpa, who was an absolute ducking legend in the community back in the day for a variety of reasons. This incident occurred during his high school sophomore year. He was a brilliant student and all the teachers loved him. And he had an all too famous, don't take anyone's bullcrap attitude. Anyway, it was the end of the year and finals had just started. All the kids were in class, waiting for their English test. English being their easiest subject, everyone was pretty chill. But when they finally got their tests, the questions they got were for math. Turns out, the school had messed up the test schedule it published. Everyone started freaking out, for obvious reasons. Gramps was pretty good with math, so he was actually kinda chill. But then, the principal came into the room and told everyone to STFU, suck it up, and just write whatever they knew. Gramps, extremely irked by the principal's attitude, did just that. After he answered every question on the test, he got a few additional sheets and titled the new section as "A Few Things I Know." He wrote down a very neat, bulleted list of every nasty rumor going around the school about the principal. This included stuff about how the principal was having an affair with one of the teachers, how the principal was allegedly a closet cross-dresser, how the principal was morbidly obese and had an all-too-friendly relationship with alcohol, etc. Naturally, the guy was livid. Gramps was about to get expelled. But, because almost all the teachers loved him, they kinda tried to talk the principal out of it. The teachers finally convinced the principal to let it slide, on the condition that Gramps wrote a letter of apology. Which Gramps did. He wrote, and I quote, "I apologize for listening to the principal and writing whatever I knew. I'll remember not to listen to him in the future." He took the 2-week suspension like a badass when senior year started. The next story is titled, "More Cream." You got it. I was a waitress at a brunch restaurant. It was Sunday, which is the worst and busiest day of the week. Guests were usually nightmares. I had a group of middle-aged women at one of my tables, and they were the kind of people who would pretend you didn't exist when you approached them. Anyways, finally got a drink order out of them after 20 minutes of them just not responding every time I touched the table. If you're really busy, trying to flip tables during rush, you know how frustrating this is. They all wanted coffees with cream. Cool. Brought them their coffees and cream. We served cream on the side of coffee in these cute tiny metal pitchers. Anyways, after I set that all on the table, I asked to take their orders, which was also hard to get out of them. They finally focus and start placing orders, and then as I'm asking the final woman what she would like as a side, one of the women interrupted me saying, "And you better bring more cream for this coffee to my table," rolled her eyes and went back to her conversation. Okay, more cream. Got it. I complained to my co-workers about this table when I was putting their order in, and we got the idea to fill a shot glass with an unholy amount of cream to give to her. Took the shot glass back to the table, said, "Here's your cream," gave her my fake server smile. We watched her try to pour it into her coffee from a distance and saw it pour down the side of the shot glass, down her arm and onto the table and cuff of her shirt. I ignored them until they were finished with their food. Hope she enjoyed her cream. They actually tipped me extra because I think they realized they were being turds. The next story is titled, "Write About Anything." This is a tale of my dad. When I got to 10th grade in High DC Hool, my English teacher looked me up and down sternly on the first day and told me that I was absolutely not to copy my dad's work. I was absolutely baffled. For one, her son was the same age as me, so she was about the same age as my parents or close. But I was clueless what she meant. I went home and asked. When he was a senior in high school, my dad had a brand new the job English teacher. Yup, same lady. She was newly graduated, so she was just a few years older than her students, and apparently had all of the boys' full attention, if you catch my drift. For the final exam, she went really easy on the class. It was an essay, but the students could write on any subject they chose. The grading would be for quality of composition. Yeah, my dad wrote an essay on "Mrs. Hoxie has a fine ass." And it was well composed, too. He got a good grade. And she remembered it a couple of decades later well enough to give me snark in front of the other students. The next story is titled, "Try to Guilt Trip Me into Giving You Free Food? You Get Nothing Instead." Okay, so to preface, I used to work as a pizza delivery driver several years ago, and my boss was pretty cool. We still hang out sometimes even to this day, but things can get stressful when busy, as it was a small shop with only me and him working weekends, with me delivering and him cooking, and Saturdays were by far our busiest shifts. So I was working a Saturday, in the middle of another hectic shift. I had to drop off deliveries for 3 different houses. This is nothing new, as I'd often have to make multiple deliveries on the same trip, but one of the houses, the last one, had already called up several times to ask where their order was, as it was already late. For whatever reason, my boss never told them the truth and would always palm them off by saying it was nearly ready when in truth he hadn't started it, so I was expecting them to be a little pissed off when I arrived. Unfortunately, on my way to the last house, I get a phone call from my boss saying I'd made an error with the first 2 deliveries by accidentally giving them each other's food and to go pick them up and swap them immediately. I asked him if I should drop off the last order first, but he said no, so this meant house number 3 would be waiting even longer for their food. I finally arrive at house number 3, admittedly a good hour or so after they should have had their food originally, so I was fully expecting a tongue lashing off the occupants. However, what happened surprised even me. I'm paraphrasing the conversation, as this was a few years ago, but I remember most of it pretty well, and it went roughly like this. Me, knocks on the door. Karen, you're late. Me, I can only apologize. K, that's not good enough, you were meant to be here an hour ago. Me, again, I'm sorry, but I can't control when the orders are made, I just deliver them when I'm told to. Now, normally, this is where the customer would have felt they've aired their grievance, pay for the food, and go back in. Not Karen. K, I don't care. You've ruined our anniversary night, what are you going to do to make it better? Me, well again, I can only apologize, but I'm here now. K, I've got children through there who are having to have sandwiches now because you're so late, so what are you going to do to make it right? I finally catch on to what she's insinuating, that I should hand over the food for free and take the financial hit myself. Me, well all I can do is say sorry for it being late, but that will be total please. K, well we've already phoned up and cancelled the order, so how are you going to make things right? As soon as she said that, a light bulb went off in my head. Me, well, unfortunately, if you've cancelled the order, then I'm afraid I can't hand over the food, and I should return it to the shop straight away. Have a good night. With that, and without another word, I turned away, climbed back into my car with all the food, and took it back to the shop. I told my boss what had happened, and he blacklisted them from ordering again. He was also able to sell the pizzas off half price to some regulars who came in drunk looking for something quick. I had a handful of incidents working there, but that one will always stick in my mind. I heard from my boss that they tried ordering again a few years later after I stopped working there, and he informed them they were blacklisted to their total surprise. The next story is entitled Sports Parents. This is a multi-barreled case of malicious compliance. A few years back my son was in an under-16s water polo team. The club's pool had just been closed by the city council, so this was the last season these kids would play together for that club. The National U16s tournament for that year was being held in our city, so I pitched to the parents and club that we take them to Nationals age championships for the experience. I was coaching them. There were 3 entitled parents, kids were going to the Olympics type, but this story only refers to 2 of them. I'll call them Fred and Barney, primarily because of the physical resemblances. Fred's boy was a U14's goalie, and quite good. Barney's boy was a driver, small, fast, and an ego that was way bigger than his size. Barney's U14 boy was his friend. They often worked as a pair. Fred and Barney asked the club to let them play U16s for development as they had been selected for the state squad. My son played field instead of goalie for the rest of the season to make that possible. Come Nationals the team went in ranked dead last, about 40 teams. Fred pulled a shifty on the player roster at the start of the first match so Barney's kid could have his favorite number, 7, that my son had worn all year. My son had to wear a cap with a red 13, the reserve goalie cap. They were placed in a pool with 2 teams that would go on to come second and third. They lost these matches by massive margins, more than 1 goal per minute in 32-minute games. I was abused by Fred and Barney because the kids lost and it apparently was all my fault. The kids just beat the remaining teams in their pool by playing the best team play they had ever played. This meant they had jumped up to a ranking range of somewhere between 17th and 23rd. They went through next stage of the tournament and wound up playing in the 1920th ranking match against one of the top regional teams in country. In water polo, the manager is meant to track all of the stats in the match, major fouls and goals being the important ones. Our best kid got rolled 3 major fouls in the 3rd quarter. He had only received 2, and I tried to challenge. The match official asked for our records from Fred so he could compare to the game sheet. Fred had nothing but a blank sheet. A second kid on 2 majors also got rolled. From there the boys went from 4-1 up to 4 all at full time. Penalty shootouts to decide ranking. Here comes the compliance. Fred and Barney insisted we put our best kids forward to win the shootout. I said yes and they exclaimed, about F*** king time. I picked 4 of our best remaining shooters. I switched my son into goals, 2 years older than Fred's kid, and also made rep squads. I could only do this because of Fred's switching of caps. Without that switch my son couldn't have gone in goals. I had to have Fred's kid in the shooting lineup to replace him in goals. I replaced Barney's kid with Fred's kid. Fred swore and stormed off. Barney also swore and joined him. My son let 0 goals in during the penalty shootout and the kids won the match. Fred's boy wasn't great at saving penalties, and turned out he wasn't good at shooting them either and missed. So Fred and Barney made this win possible by switching caps and insisting we play to win. The next story is titled, Start When I Tell You. I used to work for a place that set up a stall outside of a touristy area. Every morning me and one co-worker would arrive by bus at 8:30 and begin setting up. The boss arrived a little before 9 with stuff to stock the stall. Now we still had leftover stuff from the day before that my co-worker and I would have set out and usually sold a good chunk of already. So it wasn't like we were twiddling our thumbs for a half hour, and setting up just the stall took a few minutes as well. The boss decided one day that he was sick of paying us to start at 8:30 when he thought we weren't doing any work, so he said we were not to log any time before 9. The bus was an infrequent one that ran only once an hour, so to be on time we still had to get there at 8:30. There was a little cafe nearby, and so my coworker and I would go there to grab breakfast and sit in front of where the stall usually went. The boss arrived closer to 8:45 the next day to see no stall set up and us just sitting there eating. He was visibly upset that we hadn't started working for free and asked why we weren't set up. He must have been really dumb because we aren't paid to start until 9. Wasn't something he had thought of. While he did all the work we would have done, he grumbled. By 9 he wasn't even done, he hadn't even unloaded the day's stuff from his truck. Most likely from all the time he wasted glaring at us, because it really didn't take that long. Now, I love this job. My dad was actually the head boss and would have paid both of us the half-hour difference. We just wanted to make this guy's life a little more difficult. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comment.